Do you see areas where people people commonly drop the ball in this process? Like, where's a common theme that you see people struggle with? And maybe can you give us some tips on how to overcome?
I think the major two, we've discussed that, but we should probably dive in deeper into them, are not selling your services. Just don't sell your services. No one cares about your services. No one cares how many backflips you do and how many coffees you drink. They just care about the thing you're getting me.
Raul Hernandez Ochoa is a husband, father, and growth strategist, helping founders increase performance, serve more clients, and scale profitability without the overwhelm. He helped companies 2 to 5x with millions in revenue and profit, led a revenue team to produce 50 million in 1 year, and has trained thousands of entrepreneurs. He serves clients to reach their growth goals and scale their impact. He is also the host of the Do Good Work podcast, and I love his platform. It's direct and straight and to the point. Do Good Work, which is what we're going to talk about today. Raul, welcome to Prospecting on Purpose.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation today. I love talking about sales, and I know that you're the same way. So before we dive into some specific sales tactics for our audience, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you support your clients today?
Absolutely. I started in entrepreneurship like everyone started, wanting to start a software company. That turned into a marketing agency, and that turned into helping others get more leads and supporting in the online space. And then from there, helped grow other agencies from leadership positions to mergers, acquisitions, the whole nine. To 1 year, we took a team from 7 people to 24 in like 11 or 12 months. So in less than a year, I've been able to build in-house teams, like you mentioned, to reach. We'll save the beginning story for a different time during cocktail hour, but we hit 50 million in a year. So that was very exciting year, but
That
it's a
was
lot
in
of
the
work.
software space too.
That was in the coaching and industry,
Oh,
but it's
cool.
essentially built the agency, an agency model within that organization. And I've been helping clients primarily a lot from the growth operations aspect, from the leadership aspect, but now more and more always on quality leads, quality conversions, and increasing revenue and profit per client so that we can serve not 20 or 30 people a month, but 5 to 12 good accounts per year.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I want to I want to double click on that. I just heard that phrase. You mentioned, and in some of my research before this call, you talked about getting more revenue per client. And I think that is such an interesting, I don't want to say the word easy way to increase your sales, but it's a strategic way if you focus on it intentionally. So can you share a little bit about what that looks like and how you help your clients do that?
Yeah, it is simple. So, I mean, you could overnight just say, I'm just going to increase my prices by 50% and call it a day. You can do that. I like to do it more strategic, depending on the industry, the products that you're selling, the services that you're selling, the nuance of the founder and who's actually doing the sale. So there's essentially 3 parts. There's the before, there's the during, and then there's the after. In the before, it's all strategy. I think you mentioned this in one of your recent pods, like you have to figure out what is the actual value prop, not just here's what I do, who I do it for, but like what is the actual business case and the outcomes that the person that you're serving is going to get. You have to have that dialed in, because one product or service, and even if you're selling a B2B service, you should be selling a product, and I'll get to that in just a second. But when you're selling a product or service, it has to be in a solution-oriented way where you know who you're talking to. Even if you're, I've spoken to a lot of generalist agencies in the last couple of weeks. Some people say like, oh, you should niche down. You should just focus on one avatar, one ICP. Well, yeah, but you can also have customer segments within your generalist agency. It's typically 2 to 3 different segments who are your best customers, but identifying within your company, who are my best clients, or even if you're niche down, who is my one best client, but knowing when I serve them at this capacity, and we'll talk about the product in just a second. When I serve them here, what actually gets solved for them? What problems are they facing? And this can be anywhere from 5, 8. Don't do more like 13 problems. Like just focus on the core big 5 or the big 8 problems. And then from there, translate. What are the areas of transformation that I deliver? What are the actual things they're going to get? And how can we measure that? And how can we anchor that towards either an outcome, a result, or a measurement? So that when you're working with me, you're not buying my services, you're not buying this thing, you're buying the dopamine, you're buying the outcome. And that also has to cross-pollinate to your product and your service. Because when you're selling these services, no one cares. I did this LinkedIn search and I'll do it maybe once a month. You look into Sales Nav, you type in, if let's say you're looking for a marketing agency or you're looking for whatever your industry is. And I kid you not, you scroll through 20, 30 of these profiles. They're all the same. They're all saying, me too, me too, me too. We'll do all these things for you. So it's pretty much, it's commodity positioning. So how do you deposition yourself from a commodity based and look at yourself as a partner or a strategic partner? You anchor it towards the key solutions that we just talked about, but also don't sell the services. And this is the hardest thing. Even if when I work with clients, like kid you not, one of our clients right now, we went through this whole strategy phase. We went through this entire process. We're building out their new sales page and their outreach, et cetera. And when the first 3 drafts or 2 drafts of the sales page was selling the service, I'm like, you don't sell the service. You sell the problem and the solution. And you want to package it into a unique mechanism. What's the widget? What's the thing? What's the essence of what you're selling that communicates value, but isn't just like this made up hypey word? It's in alignment to the problems they want to solve. And when they're buying from you, they're buying the end outcome. And the more you can get to the end outcome, the more you can quote unquote productize the delivery of those services. And we can get to that in just a second, even deeper. The easier it becomes for sales to not oversell, for fulfillment to know exactly how to fulfill on it, and also for there to be a really good match between the customer segments or your ICP. So all these 3 things have to happen in tandem before you can actually raise your prices, talk to people, and then we can talk about how you actually do that in the sales process, because that's part 1. That's the thinking before the action. The action is simple. Like if I can do the action, like anyone listening here can totally do the action, been kicked in the teeth long enough to know that like I'm nothing special. So the thinking though, that's the most important piece. The thinking is the most important piece.
I appreciate what you talked about. And there were a couple things that I want to pull from that. Like I liked your example of searching LinkedIn and just seeing everyone talking about their services or how they help and you know, a whole wide variety of solutions. I think that one of the biggest ways that you stand out is exactly what you're saying, is figure this stuff out before you present any product or service. Because really the product or service, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it matters, but it matters like third. Like you can't even get to that point until you solve the outcome. So I also liked, Raul, what you said about, you know, as you're structuring their problem, structuring your widget and how you solve that problem, it was, you want to highlight the outcome, the result, or the metric. Were those the 3? You said something really great right there that I want to repeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it as a table. So the first column is the problem, and all you're doing is selling problems and solutions to problems. The second is the area of transformation. What happens to them when this problem is solved? But then the third is, how do you measure success per? You can measure it through what they're able to do, enablement. You can measure it through actual ROI. And people always think, well, what's the return on investment on this? It's not always that. One of our clients, she works with institutions that get a lot of donations. And for them, it isn't about, oh, you know, let's make an ROI on what the donations. The more is like, how do we prudently deploy donor dollars? See that thinking there? It's a little different than the traditional, hey, you're going to get 126 ROI if you work with us. Like, who cares? Are you making an impact? How do we report this back? How do we report this back to the people who are giving us the millions of dollars? So you need to dial this in to the customer segment. But those would be the big 3 columns. And then if you have a case study, like how do you prove success there? Show them, don't tell them.
That's great. Because I think so I'm just past the 2nd year in my business, and one of my services offered is sales trainings and sales workshops. And it's so funny because with sales trainings, one of the things I'm learning is I almost have to demonstrate that they have a problem first, and then how can I solve it? But the ROI piece is really tricky because I support B2B, long, complex sales cycles, and you have to depend on people to self-report. So I'm doing 1-year-long case study to help with that social proof, but that's been a metric that's been hard for me to quantify because it depends on the teams taking the action to get the result. So it's interesting, but I like how you broke it down that way.
Let's lean into that too, just to kind of bring that to the surface, because this is another sticking point when I work with clients, and just like the belief of overcoming, okay, is it just ROI that we measure? So we really want to, when you dive into your ICP and your customer segments, obviously, you know, like the industry, team size, right? Okay, that's simple, easy. who are you actually selling to? What is their personality like? And you can use this, you can use whatever, the big five. It doesn't matter. The key thing is, are they going to want to be correct? Are they super analytical and want to make sure that they're safe? Are they wanting to promote and support others? Or are they more interested in others' well-beings and our supporter role? And that's critical because the language that you use during the sales process, which we can get to in the next part of the convo, the language, the presentation, the vernacular, the tonality, it all plays a role. And it also plays a role in your how you stack the problems and the solutions. Like you have to know who you're selling into. Like what is their personality type? When I attract businesses and I work with them, it's almost like the same personality type. And it's like, okay, that's what I'm putting out there. That's who I'm attracting. Great. Let me lean in on that. Let me serve them at the higher level. You got to find that for your business. And this could be like, well, it doesn't matter. I just want to make a sale today. Well, let me tell you, this is the difference between making a sale at 1x the potential to like 10 to 17x the current pricing that you have.
Right. And I think one thing I'm starting to get now that I'm past the 2-year mark is that, services ecosystem. I'm able to sell different services to my same clients, which has been wonderful. And that's, long-term vision, but now it's starting to happen. It's like, hey, we need a quote for you to help us over here. Hey, why don't we train our sales team? So it's starting to happen, but it is interesting, especially Raul. Let me ask you a question. In B2B, we have a lot of different decision makers in the process. So in the example of what does your client care about? Like I'm talking to HR professionals to hire me for their sales team, but the sales team disc profile is much different than the HR professional's disc profile. So it's interesting because you have to kind of flex to who you're talking to also. And that's like just another layer down that we got to focus on.
It's the beauty of human behavior, and there's no escape. So
I feel like that's why I'm into astrology. Sometimes people are like, I don't get it. I'm like, well, it's just another way of describing human behavior. It's just fun.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, yeah, when there's multiple things. So let's talk about the actual presentation and the actual process for the sales, because there's a certain level of certainty that you have to deliver regardless of who you're talking to. Like if you don't believe in what you're selling, then that's like you're not going to sell. But to close the loop on the product piece, when I say productized services, some people think that it's just like courses or you create like done with you servicings apart from the done for you. But I like to think of it as Lego blocks. Like knowing that for these core problems that you're solving, you know which service or which tangent or aspect or bullet point of the service solves that. And you have a back end system, either human, yourself, or technology to execute it for you so that it's on repeat on dial. So regardless of what you sell, even if you make a bespoke offering, you can just collect the Lego pieces together and execute on that. And I'm not oversimplifying this, but this is critical, especially for sales teams that tend to either oversell, overpromise, and then fulfillment gets backlogged. You go negative with pricing with clients, meaning your profitability goes negative, and like even your pricing was good, your profit is tanked.
Right.
And there's friction between sales and fulfillment. So the key thing is to marry fulfillment in alignment to the services that you're selling, and then having those things dialed in so that, okay, client wants number 1, 3, and 5. We're going to go and execute that. We can do that with these timeframes, these deliverables, and we would have it backlogged. That's the one critical piece. That's not really always spoken, and it's critical for sales to be able to have that alignment with the operations and fulfillment team.
Okay, that's cool, because I think it also speaks to if you're talking to someone who cares about this and you're talking to somebody else who cares about this, but they both have influence, you already have it's like the Lego blocks is a cool analogy. It's almost like a menu item of what you pull for which person and when. I like that visual.
And it feels custom. So you can create custom quotes and custom orders, even though you're selling the same stamp over and over and over again. Those are the best businesses, by the way, where you're doing the same thing repeatedly. But the thing is, if you want to focus on value, now this goes now into like the sales conversation. Like you already know the typical discovery, the gap selling. I mean, we can dive into that. The key thing that I think is the most important is to hear the words that they're saying and just use the inflections and understanding and making sure that they know that you heard them. And this is where you start taking notes, and then you start creating a quote unquote custom scope. Some scopes are custom regarding like, here's what needs to be true for you to get this outcome. But the key, I think, is in the actual presentation. And I don't usually share slides until either A, requested for it, or B, like midway through the conversation. Because the key is always to, like, once you do your discovery, it depends if it's 1 call, 2 call, 3 call discoveries, depending on the level of stakeholders and the size of project that you're selling. I mean, I'm not a proponent of a 2 call close. I think it's like build a relationship, build the trust, make sure you can solve the problem. When you go to the presentation, though, I always hone in on, here's what you told me. Make sure this is true. And when you do this, I've had this where I gone on the second call with a team, or it was the second or third call. And I mentioned, here's what I heard. Is this right? And I just started talking. You mentioned that you were struggling with X, Y, and Z, or you can't predictably create success over and over again. And as I said those, it was almost like, yeah, you're right. And like their shoulders dropped down. And it isn't to hurt them. It's just in a way for them to know that you understand their problems more than they do. And everyone says that, but how do you actually deliver that? And the way that I deliver it is, here's what I heard. Can you help me make sure that this is correct? You're not saying, reading from a checklist. Okay, you're suffering from X, Y, and Z, and AB's like, don't do that. Like that's just scripted. But then when you move into the transition phase, okay, cool, that makes a lot of sense. And our goal is to achieve this outcome. So here's what needs to be true for that to happen. And instead of saying, here's what I'm going to sell you, it's like, here's what you need to do. Here's the items. You can run with it. You can have someone else do it for me, or we can collaborate to do it together. And when you list out, here's what needs, that's your scope. And you tell them, here's what's going to happen. But then I always love to give options, giving them options of how to engage with you. And this goes back to the productized service. This goes back to the Lego pieces of, here's how we can engage together. If you want to do the high end, the mid end, and the low end. And for our financial CEOs or CEOs out there making a profit, you want to make sure that whatever your lowest pricing is your ideal profit number. So whatever you sell, you're always going to be profitable. But when you do it this way, you anchor it towards value, unless it's a straight up productized services and you just focus on the back and increase profitability and LTV. But you focus on value and you swing for the fences, not absurd balloon pricing. I've tried that, done that. It works, but just realistic, non-delusional pricing that can help people and serve them. But you can swing for the fences. Here's all I'm saying.
Have you noticed? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to finish by saying the key thing is to always empower their next move. You're not there to push. You're not there to sell. You're like, here's what needs to happen. Here's how we can do it. How do you want to proceed? And they self-select and close themselves. You do not have to push.
Okay, let's say that again. So you present the 3 different options, like a good, better, best solution based on what they told you. So it appears customized. You know that it's a win no matter which path they take. And then say your script again, Raul.
The script,
or the what you just said.
Well, when you do this, it has to come from a place of service.
Of course.
You're empowering their next step. And when you do that, they literally self-select and close themselves, because you don't have to push. You don't have to say, this is what we need to do. You just empower them and just move forward in the conversation. Okay, great. When would be a good day to either touch base to finish this up with the team or select a date to press play?
Love it. And have you noticed this is more of just like a curious, curious feedback, but when you present your 3 packages or your 3 pricing tiers, have you noticed a theme? Like, do most people select the middle one? It's not a race to the bottom. Have you seen any type of like synergies there?
So sometimes I just present one. Okay. Sometimes I present 2 or 3, depending on, again, what they need and the level of engagement. This is going to sound weird and like, oh, Ro, you're underpricing your clients. Like, usually people want to select the first one. And it's not because it's not manipulative in any way. It's just like, if you want to go fast, if you want the highest value, I think the value conversation that we know the problems, we build the rapport, and even some of my clients, and it's not because I'm special or this process is amazing. My clients are just phenomenal people, but they close the biggest deals in their business just following this process. Cool. And it's a lot of that is the relationship building. And the key thing is just presenting it in a way. And usually the right stakeholder is always going to choose. And I had a founder tell me, like, I care about my business so much, I'm going to choose the best. I didn't even look at the other 2.
Nice.
Because decisions are a mirror of who they are, not of what you do. Like, there's a reason why there's Honda, Toyota, Lexus, and then like whatever the other luxury cars Like there's a reason why the same cars with four wheels get you from point A to point B have different classes and different vehicle sizes. Like it's a reflection of the person driving it, not about the car.
Oh, the car analogy is great. I like that because that's interesting too, because I'm thinking about, like a luxury travel agent, for example, if you're presenting options, that person's going on a once in a lifetime trip, they're already investing and spending the money. Like, yeah, I don't want to sacrifice that snorkeling tour. Like, I want to go snorkeling. So I know it's a little bit of a simplified analogy there, but I really like how you laid that out. And I've noticed the same thing too in my sales training, the closing part isn't that beefy because if you did all the first things right, the close becomes very organic and simple. Like, why
Mhm.
wouldn't they work with you? You understand their problem. You speak the same language they do. You gave them a customized solution. So I really like that, you mentioned they're kind of selling themselves and they closed it themselves because that is a sign that you did the first part correctly.
Yeah, and it's all about. I'm a huge proponent of just relationship, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds lame and old school and simple, but with the rise of AI and like non-relationship selling, just actually caring is significant. You'll be in the top 1% of the 1% of people who are selling your clients, and that's not just me. It's the feedback that I'm giving, even in my own prospecting. So yeah, it's just around collaborating and finding ways to make that match. Because sometimes the question isn't how we're going to work together. It's like we're going to work together. It's just a medium of like which path we take.
Yeah. I like that mindset shift too. Like, yeah, of course we're going to work together. It's just finding the right fit for what you need. That's very cool. And I would be curious in your experience too, with the different types of people that you worked with. Do you see areas where people commonly drop the ball in this process? Like where's a common theme that you see people struggle with? And maybe can you give us some tips on how to overcome?
I think the major two we've discussed that, but we should probably dive in deeper into them are not selling your services. Just don't sell your services. No one cares about your services. No one cares how many backflips you do and how many coffees you drink. They just care about the thing you're getting me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the number one thing that is takes some time to overcome is just sell the outcome or sell the problem. And your marketing is just selling problems. The second one is just the normal human fear of putting a normal aggressive price. I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to this prospecting and with clients like people that I'm looking to support and current clients looking to support. Like some people are raising their pricing because they want to scale up and they're a little nervous about the new pricing. I think that's normal. Even when our clients, when we're pitching and we're presenting services that they usually charge 3x less, but because the value is there, it would be a disservice to charge the so little amount. They're afraid, like, oh crap, am I going to get laughed out of the room? That's literally what I hear. Like, I feel like I'm going to get laughed out of the room, and I don't know how to like just overcome that by saying just overcome it. It's just normal. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a normal piece. It's like when and I've said this enough, so I have to do it. Like I'm training for an Ironman, and I've
Cool.
only done like the half distance of an Ironman, which is like an Olympic. And even anytime I line up to go swim for a triathlon, like I'm freaking nervous. Like that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. It's like once you get the first yes, I'm like, oh, this is normal. And then once you get that consistency, like, okay, this is normal. There's some ways that you can like condition yourself in terms of the beliefs you have around your services, the beliefs you have around the deliverables, tracking your client wins and just saying, look how freaking awesome this can actually be. I know this is worth it. So you can condition yourself over time with that. But I think in the beginning, when you're doing this, it is going to take some time and you're going to be like, okay, wow, that's different. I'm not used to this. But once you get that first yes, you're like, oh, that was too easy. Like maybe I'm underpricing.
Yeah, interesting. Because I think that when I first started my business, that was my big struggle. I would either price too high and they were sticker shocked. And or I take that back. I actually think I priced appropriately, but I didn't do a good enough job communicating the value and the
Mhm.
transformation. Like that's what I learned at the beginning. But I also think people thought since I was new in my business, it was a lower dollar amount that I was worth. It's like, no, this is starting from experience. And I think that's a big hurdle that I've had to get over. But you're exactly right. Like once you start getting the yeses, it's like, okay, this isn't out of line. This is appropriate. And sometimes it changes based on the client too. You might, based on what you're delivering, the dollars might change. Like I have one client I charge X and one client I charge Y, and it's kind of similar work, but it's just meeting them where they're at and how I want to use them as like my own, case study or whatever that looks like too. There's other forms of currency when you're building too. And so it's been interesting, but it's been probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do is figure out pricing models and being confident in presenting pricing.
There's so many cool pricing models too on that point. Like it's not just value-based pricing. You can value-based price. One of my buddies is doing subscription-based. So it is a value, but it's subscription-based pricing. So they're a design firm, and I think they raise their prices to the range is 9 to 15K a month for the design services. And they raised it because of the demand. So you can do that. You can do a rev share deal. You can do equity, maybe not. I wouldn't always propose that. But there are ways to do like retainers plus, performance fees, which is like what a rev share would look like. So there's a lot of different ways to work with pricing to your point. Where's the client at? How do we serve them? What vehicle did they choose to get their outcome? Depending on that vehicle, what is the appropriate pricing model and who's taking the risk?
Do you have any tips on just giving our listeners maybe a little bit more confidence when it comes to like standing in our pricing?
Okay. I mean, this is going to be different, but like wake up early and do very difficult things. Go for like a 40-minute sprint run, like intervals. Like once you do that and you figure out like, wow, I'm capable of things because everyone has a body. And if you're healthy and thankfully like can have mobility, like everyone has a body. The people you're selling to, same thing. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
It's just how you think and the words that you use and identifying what words am I using to describe myself, my circumstance, my opportunity in the future. And also knowing you're thinking, am I stuck in the past? Am I too anxious about the future? Or am I sitting in the present? And there are ways to get not just present now, but like being like gratitude always brings you back to the present. So these are a little bit different than like maybe what traditional people would say.
I love that answer.
But I mean, I think this is why I love, even though it's hard training for this thing. It's like, wow, crap, I can do this. Or like, wow, my heart rate is now like incredibly healthy and you're capable of so much. And if you see that, like, okay, well, how do I carry this on to other areas of my life? Because, my greatest, my best mentor says this, and it took me, I don't know how many hours, like hundreds of hours to figure, like, sometimes a message takes, goes around the world and it just takes a little bit more time to go through those 2 inches between the years. Yes. So, but if you're the right kind of person, you have the right habits, you have the right, mentality, you have the right focus, you have the right aspirations and determination. You just have to be the right kind of person and you can do it. That's it.
I love that, Raul. Thank you for that. Because I think it's a mindset shift in how you show up too. And I think that that's very cool. I like to just wake up early and do something difficult. I'm like, all right, I can do that. I think the first big negotiation I had to do, I called the guy, I've had everything ready to go. And he said, oh, can you call me back in 10 minutes? I'm like, oh, okay. And so I had an appointment I had to be at. So I was like, okay, I'll just drive to the appointment and take the call from the parking lot. So I'm driving to my appointment and in my head, I'm like, you're a shark, Sarah, you're a shark. And a little voice popped in my head. I was like, well, you're kind of a baby shark. So I just started the business. And so I listened to that song, Baby Shark, on the way to the appointment. And I was like so much lighter that by the time I had the phone call, I was asking for big dollars. And I just kind of loosened myself up that way. Yeah. And then later I called my parents to tell them how it went. I said, man, my first job in LA, I was getting paid X dollars. And I just asked this guy for the same thing for a month. It was just it's almost nice. Just, if you can make it like light and comical, I think that helps too. Like it just removes some of the, I don't want to say desperation, but it removes some of the pressure we put on ourselves. And I loved your mindset of just, if you're in your body in a powerful way, whatever that looks like to you, that's what's going to help how you show up.
No, I love that. And Josh Braun is one of my favorite, like his one-liners or his one punches. It's always detached. Like if it doesn't work, okay. If it does work, okay. But the key thing is, and I like this. This is the Norwegian translation of the word sales. I think it's selja with a J. Selja. It means to serve. And if you really cut, it's okay, cliche, stupid, whatever. Like, okay, like, hear me out. If you really do come from a place like that, other people can feel the contagion that you're different and you're actually there to help the other human. And when you do that, like, you'll never run out of work. It's almost like once you dial in acquisition, once you dial in how to get them consistently and you seek to serve, the question is how big. When I worked in house or I worked in helping agencies scale up or marketing firms scale up, once you crack that code, it really was a question of how large do we want to build this thing, and then the operation sustainability to fulfill that demand. And I think that's the key thing to look at here. And the only thing that can happen to do that is you're solving a unique problem or an important problem. You're owning that, and you're just not stopping. Sometimes the key thing to business is endurance. I talk to people who are in business for 20 years, like, dang, that's goals. And some people who are promoting or self-promoting themselves hypey are like, I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm like, bro, like that's barely getting started.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting thing too. I was talking to someone who's in their business 7 years, and they used to, work at a very well-known brand and a very high level role. And somebody put us in touch, and I was telling her, I said, well, I feel like I should be farther. And she goes, you've gotten far in 2 years. Like, it's okay. And I think you're exactly right. Like, I liked your point that you made, Raul, about looking at the clients that you have closed or the work that you have won and counting it as wins. And it doesn't always have to be monetary wins either. It could be that person told me I helped them. That person, sent a LinkedIn message and said the podcast helps them. Like, you just have to measure success a little bit differently. But I really liked your point of, if you show up energetically with kind of the wanting to serve, you're never going to run out of work. And I think that's very cool, because I think sales is a noble cause. I think it's something that we all need, and it gets like a dirty word. So I like that energy shift, and I like the Norwegian definition too.
Yeah.
Or translation.
Yeah. The pushy idiots are the ones no one likes, but and I'll call them out any day. But one thing too, and maybe this can help, because I was on a pod, the Solopreneur pod, and amazing podcast if you want an intro to him. But he mentioned, because he was going solo, it's like, hey, well, what do you do like when like you're not confident, or like when you have self-doubt? Because everyone has self-doubt, like I'm not as good as I think I am, or whatever. It's just keeping that wins journal, but also if you can get the testimonials from the clients, if you can figure out a case study or way up permission to do that, but always have that wins journal. It's like, okay, cool, I don't suck as much as I think I suck, because sometimes we'll have that doubt, or sometimes the fruit of the work that we do is going to take 30 days or 60 days to mature. Another thing that I would recommend is just keep a daily log, like a daily wins, and always focus on the main 3 things that matter the most. Number 1, did you make your 3 deposits in revenue generating activities? Not just I followed up. That's not a deposit. That's a continual. Did you make a deposit to make an offer? Did you make an offer to either get a referral, get a client, or make an introduction? Because everyone that you talk to is either going to be a prospect, going to introduce you to a prospect, or is going to be a JV marketing partner. And if you're that's one key thing to keep in mind too.
I was going to say, let's say that all again. You don't have to say it all again, but I love the every day we're showing up doing 3 things that are revenue generating activities.
Revenue generating activities. And this is legit sales, not marketing, not education, not posting, more talk to someone, introduce you to a prospect, make an offer to a prospect or to a JV referral partner or co-marketing partner. Then you focus on what deposit did I make for my clients, depending on the level of clients that you have, or your team for your clients. And then what deposit did I make to grow the business? This could be, oh, I redid the brand, or I posted this thing, or I did this podcast. Okay, cool. That's a long-term deposit. It's going to support the business. You made the sales stuff. And as you do that, because sometimes you can get unmotivated, like, oh man, oh my gosh, like, when is this going to turn out to have more work or whatever? Like, just depending on where you're at in your stage. That's really helpful, because then you can see, okay, I did the right things. I did my workouts of the day. If I do this, I eat right, I sleep well, fitness and health is like inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like that analogy too, because I did that in corporate too. I had a list, an Excel document on my desktop, and it was just called accomplishments. And whenever I closed a big deal, whenever I set up a big meeting, whenever I got feedback on a training we did internally, I would put it in that document. But every time performance review came around, I had everything there. If I was feeling down, I had everything there. So it was just, it's just nice to reflect back, because that gives us the motivation to keep going. I really like that. I did for the listeners, the show is now on YouTube. Raul, you'll appreciate this. I have
Oh,
what I
wow.
call them my impact boards. So whenever I get like,
That's so cool.
a letter from someone or somebody helps me, I just kind of like write their name on a post-it and put it on my wall. And it's
That
just
is
like a
pretty cool.
visual reminder of like, oh, I'm not running this business alone. I have great clients. I have great referral partners. I get to meet people like you and have these types of conversations. So it's been great. And I personally had a lot of takeaways in this conversation. I love the workouts for the day in terms of work activities. Any other things you want to share with us before we start to wrap up?
I think that is the core premise of how do you increase profitability and revenue per client is the strategic thinking, how you translate that to the sales presentation, how do you provide options and making sure that your team can fulfill on that. Or if you're fulfilling it on it, then you fulfill on those pieces, but you know exactly what those things have to be. And that's what is required, in my opinion, to go to market and build trust. Because I think the big key term right now is like there's a trust recession. Like, yeah, there is. But if you have these things in line, building that trust, assuming you can do that really well, is relatively simple because humans are humans.
Mhm.
They're not really going to change much. We're not going to change much. And that would be the key thing is just focus on the back end foundations. And then when you go to market, focus on building the trust.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Raul. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to hire you, if they want to learn more? Where can we find you?
The best place would be LinkedIn or right on the website, dogoodwork.io. That's dogoodwork.io. It'll send you to LinkedIn as well. Just message me or email me. You'll find my contact there.
Awesome. And I will link everything in the show notes too. I am really grateful that you and I got to meet and have this conversation. I feel excited to go through my big three deposits today. I'm ready to go. We're recording this in the morning, so we got the day ahead of us. Raul, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciated your insights and expertise.
Thank you, Sarah.